He wants to talk about the latest on repatriation flights because being a rescue teddy or that helps people that is in traumatic situations, he wants to know what's happened to the people in Lebanon that are trying to make their way back to Australia. Very sensible question, Seth.
Very, very sensible question.
Smart dog, you see. You think he's an idiot. He knows what he's talking about.
Of course, you were the one who covered these repatriation flights, Adam. But we have had some repatriation flights from Lebanon by Qatar Airways and Qantas. So do you have the details on those?
No, I don't to hand, but I just know it because I wrote about it. So effectively, now the Australian government are helping people get out of Lebanon. And two airlines have kind of stepped up to the plate, both Qantas and Qatar Airways. And both of those airlines, to be fair to them, have done these flights free of charge. So what has been happening is that I think separate charter aircraft, and I think also with some help from the RAF, they've been flying people from Lebanon to Cyprus. And in Cyprus, Qantas and Qatar have then kind of carried on their journey back to Sydney. So Qantas have been doing direct flights with their 787s, which I believe are among some of their longest haul flights that they've done. And Qatar are using its 777s flying via Doha. Now, as we record this, I think both airlines have done 2 flights each. And as well as the airlines paying for those flights, they're both also paying and helping people get from Sydney back to any airport that they need to get to. So obviously Qantas are doing this themselves and Qatar are doing this in conjunction with Virgin Australia. Now, whether or not Qatar would have helped with without the Virgin deal, with the Virgin deal, we don't know. But nonetheless, that we now have access to other international airlines that can help in these times is a very, very important development. You will remember, in fact, this has happened a lot of times in the 4 years I've been here. Anytime there's a world crisis, you will tend to have Qantas step up to the plate. You saw this a lot, I think, in the early days of COVID as well. And what they usually do particularly...
We saw it with Israel earlier in the year.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And what Qantas do in particular is they kind of do a shout-out for their staff and crew to do those flights. They're usually oversubscribed. But huge credit to both Qatar and Qantas for doing this, because it's obviously a very, very tricky situation. What the Australian federal government have been saying is that, you can register with them, and those details are on our website, to get some of those flights out. But if you can get a commercial flight, you've got to take that opportunity. I think at the time of recording this, the airport in Lebanon is open, but how long that's going to remain the case for, we don't know. So they're trying to get as many people out as possible.
Yeah, and it's good that they're. I think they've taken a bit longer with Lebanon than they did with Israel earlier in the year.
Yeah,
but it's good now that these flights are happening. And if you are happening to listen to the Australian Aviation Podcast in Lebanon, it's best if you get out now.
I shouldn't laugh. Don't be listening to this podcast. If you're in a difficult situation, get out.
I mean, if listening to back-ish episodes of the podcast could help keep you entertained on the flight home from Lebanon. We have to remember as well that Qatar Airways was, I believe, one of the only airlines that was flying to Australia during COVID. And so Qatar has done a fair bit, as well as Qantas, to help Australians get home when they've needed to. And I think there have been issues with Qatar in the past, and they don't have an unblemished record by any means. But these are the sort of things that we should be thanking Qatar Airways for.
Yeah, exactly. One of the issues during COVID, and you could see this across many different areas, but when the whole world shut down, everyone's kind of on its own. And Australia was in a difficult situation where they had Qantas as an international carrier, but Qantas effectively stopped all commercial flights for almost the best part of 2 years. And what that meant is that Australians trying to get home were reliant on overseas airlines. And obviously that was very difficult and very expensive for those overseas airlines, because not only did the borders close, but there were all sorts of restrictions in terms of flying in terms of COVID separation, etc., which made it very difficult for airlines. Qatar was one of the airlines that continued flying, particularly flying into Sydney, which kind of helped the country keep going. It helped repatriate people that needed to come home. So one of the things, whether we agree or we don't agree, or whether the deal between Qatar and Virgin ever goes ahead, we don't know. But nonetheless, it's in Australia's interest to have access to more wide-body, long-haul aircraft, because in situations like this, you need them. Like, Qantas have obviously done a very good job, but there's only so much they can do on their own. Having access to another big fleet, you've got potentially 777s, A380 is going to be very good for all involved.
And this is as well, where the deal between Virgin and Qatar comes in, because Virgin used to operate its own wide-body flights, before it went into administration, but now it's mainly doing these short hops with the 737s. And so getting access to that Qatar fleet is sort of a tester for getting the wide-body flights going again. That might portend well for the future.
Yeah.
As we discussed last week.
Yes, we haven't had much of an update actually on that potential deal, because it's still got to be cleared by, I think it's two bodies, isn't it, so far?
Oh, yeah, there's the Foreign Investment Review Board. Probably the ACCC is going to want to have a look, and other agencies, and there'll be labour questions and things like that. Workforce. So it's still very much going through the process, but we'll be interested to see how that develops.
Right, now, before we go for a break, we've probably got time for one more story. Sut chose last time. It's your turn now.